Hello, my name is Paul, and I am the voiceover for a ministry provided to you by Kym Coan at God is Government Called Your Daily Bread, taken from Christ's teaching of the Lord's Prayer in Matthew chapter 6, verse 11. This is a daily devotion ministry focused not only on uplifting Scripture, but Scripture that will grow your spiritual connection with Christ. We hope that you receive these devotions to uplift you, encourage you, but most importantly, advance your knowledge base of the Holy Scriptures. Today's focused discussion will be on our DNA tied to God. Prior to 1953, many theories continued to be developed when two scientists began the study to unlock the genetic mystery of life. The first building block map describing life was established by James Watson and Francis Crick in 1953. Through their now famous model of the double helix and the patterns of information held in the DNA molecule, the door was opened to the entire science of identifying individuals on the basis of their unique genetic characteristics. Whether it is eye color, hair color, gender, and tendencies towards certain conditions of health and disease, the codes that determine how our bodies appear and function are held in the blueprint of our genetic code. Since Watson and Crick's discovery, the science of matching segments of DNA to determine paternity, identify missing persons, and link individuals to a specific crime has become keystone in crime scene analysis worldwide. Backing up in time a bit to the 4th century, we find that scholars have openly acknowledged the editing and deletion of material that was used to establish church doctrine in 325 CE by the panel convened to establish such church doctrine. We find that under the direction of the Roman Emperor Constantine, the individuals who made up the Council of Nicaea were presented with a daunting task of taking centuries of disparate religious works and converting them into a single document that would be meaningful to the people of the region of their time. Remaining with us today, in the form of one of the most powerful and controversial books in the history of mankind and the world, the Holy Bible. In writing the Holy Bible, the Council of Nice found that much of the materials they were presented were redundant and poorly written, with overlapping versions and repeated stories. As a result, the Council recommended that at least 45 documents be removed from their task. Within the 20th century, many of the books that were removed by the Council during their edits have been recovered, translated, and made available to the general public. One of the most significant archaeologists' finds of the 20th century was the discovery of the ancient library hidden in caves above the Dead Sea shores, the Dead Sea Scrolls. Over a 10-year span from 1946 to 1956, more than 22,000 fragments of animal hide, copper, and papyrus manuscripts were pieced together, producing about 900 scrolls and revealing the original version of such Old Testament books as Genesis, Isaiah, and the words of Moses. Herschel Shanks, editor of the pioneering journal Biblical Archaeological Review, commented on the significance of the find, stating, "Over 200 biblical manuscripts were hidden in the Qumran caves, some dramatically different from accounts in the Bible." It was not until these scrolls were available for public viewing that the information became available to the public at large. 2 years before the finding of the Dead Sea Scrolls, another library of ancient writings was discovered. In December 1945, two brothers found a collection of scrolls near the Nile River village of Nag Hammadi, Egypt, which immediately began to change the way we thought of early Christianity. Now kept by the Coptic Museum in Cairo, these writings provide surprising insight into ancient Gnostic and early Christian traditions. When we consider these two archaeological libraries together, they offer perhaps the most complex view of the ancient world and early Christian traditions. They provide us with the ability to fill in the gaps and inconsistencies of the traditional scripture, Holy Bible, written by the Council of Nice. The purpose of bringing this information to our attention is to illustrate the fact that, Through the loss of these and similar bodies of information, universal principles that give great meaning to our modern world have been forgotten and prevented us from coming to know about the beginning of life. Going back even further, about 5,000 years or so, we may read the words written by Hebrew scholars precisely, as well as detailed, recording our origins. Through these words, we are given insight into the creation of the universe, the formation of the earth, and finally, the origins of our bodies. The best-known source, and one most reflected upon today, of Hebrew knowledge, is the collection of mystical writings known collectively as the Kabbalah. While it is referred to by a single name, Kabbalah, it is actually a collection of writings that form the bulk of Hebrew esoteric tradition. The most important writings contained in the Kabbalah are believed to be the Zohar, the Book of Radiance, the Midrash, the Book of Illumination, and the Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Formation, and considered the oldest and perhaps most mysterious aspect of the writings. Jewish scholars believe that the Sefer Yetzirah original text was received directly by the patriarch Abraham. With significant detail, the Sefer Yetzirah's concise text of only 1,500 lines offers a vivid description of the events leading up to, and including, the birth of the cosmos, and ultimately, our bodies. The entire text of the Sefer Yetzirah is written from the perspective of an observer narrating the miracle of God's works, step by step. In the first chapter, it begins by stating that our world is the result of three kinds of information and recorded in three distinct volumes. 1. Text, Sefer, 2. Number, Sephar, and 3. Communication, Sipper. From these three books, the text continues, He, God, created His universe. Throughout the remainder of the Sefer Yetzirah, the narration describes God's act of creation with progressively greater levels of detail. From the formation of the first elements of the universe, represented as the Hebrew letters of God's ancient name, to the way the remaining letters of the Hebrew alphabet formed all that was ever formed, the universe unfolds before our eyes as precise combinations of these letter elements. With an unprecedented level of detail in any other creation story, the Sefer Yetzirah offers the precise instructions as to how the 22 Hebrew letters interact with one another to create all the elements our world is made of. Karen Armstrong, scholar and foremost authority of world religions, in her book A History of God states that through the Sefer Yetzirah, there is no attempt to describe the creative process realistically. The account is unashamedly symbolic and shows God creating the world by means of language as though He were writing a book. When we take a closer look at the Sefer Yetzirah, the text suggests that it offers us much more than a symbolic tale. The discoveries linking the Hebrew alphabet with modern elements indicate that the Sefer Yetzirah is actually a very ancient and rich account of the intentional act of creation. For when we look at the Sefer Yetzirah text, we find that the step-by-step process closely parallels the discoveries of science made in the 20th century. However, controversy and mystery remain the topic of many heated debates today. In his book, The God Code, Greg Braden's work describes for us the historical significance of utilizing these ancient writings to identify our creation. The book lays out for us in detail the step-by-step understanding of our creation and how these ancient writings describing our creation is exactly what modern-day science has come to know independently of each other. Braden identifies for us that God's Hebrew name in the ancient times was Yahweh, YHVH, and that YH is the abbreviated and accepted form of Yahweh, YHVH meaning eternal, the ancient name of God. He goes on to tell us that by substituting modern elements for ancient letters, that we see a result that at first blush may be unexpected. Replacing the final H in YHVH with its chemical equivalent of nitrogen, God's name becomes the elements hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen and nitrogen, all colorless, odorless, and invisible gases. In other words, replacing 100% of God's personal name with the elements of this world creates a substance that is an intangible, yet very real form of creation. Indeed, in the earliest descriptions of God, we are told that he is omnipresent and takes on a form in our world that cannot be seen with our eyes. Thus, he can be known only through his manifestations. The Sefer Yetzirah describes this non-physical form of God's presence as the breath of God. Exodus reminds us in very specific terms that the name YHVH was revealed as the personal name of God. In equally clear terms, we are shown that humankind is made in the image of God. Perhaps in these statements may be found the most direct clue describing our relationship to the source of all that is. With new emphasis, the statement regarding our origins reminds us that we are made in the image of God, rather than being made as or equal to God. Although subtle, this statement suggests that, while we undeniably share in the attributes of our Creator, we're also set apart from YHVH by something that makes us very different. With the discovery in the year 2000 of our genetic code, we can look at it and see just what all this means to us in defining for us our creation and life. To break this down now for our understanding, God's ancient name was Yahweh, YHVH. In Watson and Crick's discovery of our genetic code, they found that life is formed as combinations of only 4 chemical compounds. These compounds, basic units of life, adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine, A, T, G, and C respectively, called DNA bases, carry all the information required to produce every form of life known to ever exist. This means that from the smallest single-celled organisms to the trillions of cells that make up a single human body, the code of each life form is made from different arrangements of these 4 bases. Braden, in his book, The God Code, tells us, the key to translating the code of DNA into a meaningful language is to apply the discovery that converts elements to letters. Based upon their matching values, hydrogen becomes the Hebrew letter Yod, Y, nitrogen becomes the letter He, H, oxygen becomes the letter Vav, V, and carbon becomes Gimel, G. These substitutions now reveal that the ancient form of God's name, YH, exists as the literal chemistry of our genetic code. Through this bridge between God's name and the elements of modern science, it now becomes possible to reveal the full mystery and find even greater meaning in the ancient code that lives as each cell of our bodies. Braden goes on in his book The God Code to tell us, substituting modern elements for the ancient letters, it is clear that although we share in the first 3 letters representing 75% of our Creator's name, the 4th and final letter of our chemical name sets us apart from God. While the presence of God is the invisible and intangible form of the 3 gases, hydrogen, nitrogen, and oxygen, the last letter of our name is the stuff that gives us the color, taste, texture, and sounds of our body, carbon. The one letter that sets us apart from God is also the element that makes us real in our world. Therefore, when we compare God's name to humankind's name as elements, we can see the similarities and differences. Although the specifics may vary across time and culture, in modern English, the meaning of the word eternal clearly implies an existence having no beginning or end and functioning beyond the limitations of time. It is precisely this eternal aspect that's common to both the name of God, YHVH, and the human body, YHVG. Through both the secret letter codes of antiquity and the literal translation of DNA as an alphabet, we're shown that something about our existence remains lasting and eternal. We share that never-ending quality with our Creator through a full 50% of the elements that define our genetic code. YHVH equals the name of God. YHVG, the name of man, YH, God eternal, forms 1/2 of God's name, and the name is coded into our cells. The second aspect of our chemical name carries our relationship with God to a new level. Further, it describes precisely how God exists in our bodies. The next 2 letters, VG, of our name as Hebrew letter equivalents of DNA, YHVG, illustrates the nature of this relationship. In the science of gematria, it's important to note the number codes of ancient alphabets are not sensitive to the order of the letters. Additionally, within the mysteries of the Kabbalah, the reverse, altered, order of a given set of letters is often associated with alternate realms of creation. While the qualities related to such a mirror may vary, the meaning itself does not change. Thus, with consideration to the VG or GV of humankind's name, YHVG, we may look to the literal translation for greater understanding. Within the Hebrew language, the letters GV translate to the idea of within, or more specifically, the interior of the body. Within Sefer Yetzirah's mysterious 231 mystical gates of creation, GV represents DM, or the root of the name of Adam, meaning blood. Combining these translations of the message in our cells now offers an unprecedented insight into our relationship to creation through the name of God. By replacing the elements of DNA with their equivalents of Hebrew letters, we reveal the message that is spelled out within each cell of our bodies. YH, the abbreviated and accepted form of YHVH eternal, the ancient name of God, VGGV within the body. A literal translation reveals the message, God, eternal, within the body. Thank you for joining us in this exploration of our DNA tied to God. Until next time, remember to keep the faith, stay strong, and continue to shine your light in the world.